Do you know what it feels like when someone you've poured your heart into for years looks you in the eye and calls you a thief? When your stepdaughter, whom you've raised as your own, decides that humiliating you in front of everyone will somehow make her special day more memorable? There's a particular kind of pain that comes with betrayal from someone you chose to love. It doesn't just break your heart. It rewrites your entire history. Everything you thought you had built suddenly crumbles. If you stay until the end of this story, you'll understand why some wounds never heal, why some actions can never be forgiven, and why justice sometimes requires a mother's firm hand. This isn't about revenge, it's about consequences. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Some of you might recognize yourselves in this story, and others might recognize people you know. Either way, I hope it makes you think twice about the marks we leave on the people who love us most. My name is Marie Sato, and at 56 years old, I thought I had seen it all. 2 marriages, 1 successful business, 3 children, and enough life experience to fill several memoirs. I've spent my entire adult life being the sturdy branch that everyone else swings from. Reliable, present, and unbreakable. At least that's what I thought. The morning of my stepdaughter Akira's wedding dawned bright and clear. The kind of perfect October day that costs extra in the wedding packages. Pale sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains of the bridal suite at the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, illuminating the chaos of pre-wedding preparations. Designer dresses in blush pink hung like ghosts from every available hook, while makeup cases spilled open on every surface revealed their colorful insides. "Marie-san, can you help me with this?" Akira's voice carried an edge I'd become increasingly familiar with over the past year. The wedding planning had transformed my once considerate stepdaughter into someone I barely recognized. Demanding, critical, obsessed with appearances. I blamed it on stress, on her fiancé Daiki's wealthy family and their expectations, on the pressure young women face today. I made excuses because that's what stepmothers do. We work twice as hard to prove our love is real. I crossed the room to where she sat at the vanity. Her reflection fractured across 3 mirrors. At 32, Akira was stunning. A perfect blend of her late mother's delicate features and her father's strong jawline. Her dark hair was already styled in an elaborate updo, tendrils framing a face that had graced several regional magazine covers during her brief modeling career before law school. "The clasp on this necklace is impossible," she complained, holding up the diamond pendant that had been a gift from Daiki's mother. "And Yui is useless. She's been in the bathroom for 20 minutes. I took the necklace from her hands, our fingers brushing briefly without warmth. "It's her first time being a maid of honor. Give her a break." Akira's eyes met mine in the mirror. "I didn't ask for commentary, Marie-san. Just fix the necklace." I swallowed the reply that rose to my lips and focused on the delicate platinum clasp. This wasn't the day for confrontations. I'd spent 2.5 million yen on this wedding. Money from my retirement fund that I hadn't told her about because her father, my ex-husband Hiroshi, had conveniently faced cash flow issues when the time came to contribute. The same Hiroshi who would be walking her down the aisle in his custom suit, looking every bit the successful businessman who had traded me in for his younger colleague 15 years ago. "There," I said, securing the necklace. "Beautiful." Akira didn't thank me. Instead, she opened a velvet box on the vanity, revealing a pair of sapphire earrings that took my breath away. "Daiki's grandmother loaned these to me. They're worth more than your apartment." The casual cruelty of the comparison wasn't lost on me. My modest 3 LDK in Setagaya, the home where I'd raised all 3 children after Hiroshi left, had become a point of apparent shame for Akira since she'd moved into Daiki's luxury condo in Roppongi Hills. My son Takeshi still lived with me while finishing graduate school, and my youngest, Yui, had only moved out last year. "Something borrowed and something blue in one," I commented, keeping my voice light. "They're exquisite." The suite door burst open as Yui entered, already dressed in her bridesmaid gown, phone in hand, as always. At 25, she was Akira's physical opposite, petite, delicate like me, with a permanent look of distraction that came from dividing her attention between real life and her social media empire. "Marie-san, you're not dressed yet." Yui looked me up and down, taking in my silk robe with visible disappointment. "The photographer wants family shots in 40 minutes. "I know the schedule, Yui." I had, after all, coordinated most of the day while Akira focused on creative direction, whatever that meant. "I'll be ready." "She's been helping me," Akira said. A rare moment of defense that warmed me until she added, "Though, God knows why we didn't just hire a professional stylist like I wanted. Another 150,000 yen I'd saved her by offering to do her hair and makeup myself. 20 years of running my own successful beauty salon hadn't qualified me as professional enough, apparently. I excused myself to the adjoining room where my mother of the bride dress, a silvery blue column that had cost more than my first car, waited. As I dressed, I could hear Akira and Yui's voices rising and falling, discussing people I didn't know and parties I hadn't been invited to. The familiar ache of exclusion settled in my chest. Hiroshi had taken them to Hakone last New Year while I worked through the holiday rush at the Salon. His new wife, Natsuki, younger than me by 15 years and eager to play stepmother, had posted dozens of pictures of their blended family celebrations. Akira and Yui smiling with Natsuki and Hiroshi. Takeshi reluctantly included but clearly uncomfortable. My girls had returned with designer winter clothes and stories they shared with each other but not with me. I finished applying my makeup subtle, elegant, age-appropriate, and stepped back into the main suite to find the maid of honor had emerged from the bathroom. The other bridesmaids had arrived as well, all 6 of them chattering excitedly while a photographer captured candid shots. I moved to the periphery, watching my stepdaughter in her element surrounded by friends who adored her. Whatever tensions existed between us, I couldn't deny the pride that swelled in my chest. She was magnificent. Sato-san, a hotel staff member, appeared at my elbow. The groom's mother is asking for the bride. I'll handle Sachiko-san, I said, grateful for a purpose. Akira needs to finish getting ready. Sachiko Tanaka waited in the hotel corridor, immaculate in a custom kimono, not a silver hair out of place. At 62, she looked 50, the result of disciplined self-care and unlimited resources. Her husband's technology firm had gone public when Daiki was in college, catapulting the family into the kind of wealth that made my comfortable upper-middle-class success look like poverty. Marie-san, her smile was practiced. How is our bride? Our bride? As if Akira belonged equally to both of us now? She's wonderful, almost ready. I matched her tone, pleasant and neutral. The earrings were a lovely surprise. Mother Tanaka was pleased to loan them. They've been worn by brides in our family for 4 generations. She placed subtle emphasis on our family, the circle I would never truly enter despite my emotional connection to the bride. I hope Akira has them secured. They're insured, of course, but they're irreplaceable. I watched her put them in myself, I assured her, though I hadn't. They're stunning on her. Sachiko nodded, apparently satisfied. Tanaka-san sent me to check on timing. The string quartet is set up and guests are arriving. We're on schedule, I said, feeling absurdly like I should bow deeper. 20 more minutes. After she glided away, I returned to the suite to find a flurry of last-minute adjustments. The photographer directed Akira into position near the window, where golden light created a halo around her, as her assistant arranged the train of her gown. A handmade creation that had required 3 fittings in Paris. Marie-san, Akira called, her voice suddenly girlish and vulnerable in a way that transported me back through time. How do I look? For a moment she was 8 years old again, trying on the yukata I'd bought for her first festival. She was 16, nervous before her first real date. She was 22, graduating college, looking to me for approval and reassurance. Like a dream, I said, my voice catching. Absolutely perfect. Something softened in her expression. Gratitude, love, recognition of all we'd shared before the professional mask slipped back into place. Good. Now please go check on Papa and make sure he's not drinking too much before the ceremony. You know how he gets. And just like that, I was dismissed. Relegated to handler of her father, the man who had left both of us. I did as I was told because that's what stepmothers do on their daughters' wedding days. We swallow our pride. We manage the background. We make magic happen without being seen. I found Hiroshi at the hotel bar predictably, but he was nursing a mineral water rather than his usual whiskey. He'd aged well. Damn him. Silver threading through his dark hair in a distinguished way that had only enhanced his appeal to women. He stood when he saw me approach, a reflexive gesture from his traditional upbringing. Marie, he said, genuine warmth in his voice. Time and his substantial alimony payments had softened the edges of our failed marriage. You look lovely. Thank you. I sat beside him, ordering a sparkling water for myself. Nervous about the walk down the aisle? Terrified, he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. I'll probably trip and take her down with me. How is she? Beautiful, ready, imperious, he laughed. Wonder where she gets that from. Her father, I said without hesitation. He conceded with a tilt of his head. Fair enough. He hesitated, then added, I know this day hasn't been easy for you. Akira can be demanding. She's under pressure, I said automatically. The defense mechanism of a stepmother. She's spoiled, Hiroshi corrected gently. And I take my share of the blame for that. But you've done most of the work for this wedding, and I doubt she's thanked you properly. I was saved from responding by the arrival of Takeshi, handsome in his formal suit, his girlfriend Yuki beside him. My son, thoughtful, sensitive, the peacemaker of the family, kissed my cheek. Marie-san, they're asking for you upstairs. Something about the veil. I stood, duty calling once again. Don't be late, Hiroshi. As I walked away, I heard my son say, Be nice to Marie-san today, Papa. She's doing her best. My sweet defender. At least one of my children still saw me. Little did I know that in less than 2 hours, everything would change. That the careful peace I'd maintained, the dignity I'd clung to, the love I'd given without expectation of return, all of it was about to be shattered in front of 300 wedding guests, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ceremony passed in a blur of white silk and practiced smiles. I sat in the front row alone in the crowd, watching Hiroshi walk our daughter down the aisle. Akira was breathtaking. Of course, I'd expected nothing less. What stepmother doesn't imagine this moment from the time her daughter is small? What I hadn't imagined was the hollow feeling in my chest as I watched from the sidelines. Already forgotten. The vows were exchanged beneath a flower arch that had cost more than my first car. When they were pronounced husband and wife, I clapped until my palms stung, determined to be the supportive mother, even as I felt myself fading into the background of my stepdaughter's narrative. At the cocktail reception, I navigated the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations and deflecting pitying glances. Hiroshi's new wife, Natsuki, was holding court near the string quartet, 15 years younger and worlds more magnetic than I'd ever been. She caught my eye and raised her champagne flute in what felt like a victor's salute. I smiled tightly and turned away. You're handling this with remarkable grace, said a deep voice beside me. I turned to find Daiki's father, offering me a fresh glass of champagne. Unlike his wife, Sachiko, who moved through the room with the calculated precision of a chess master, Tanaka-san had a genuine warmth about him. 15 years of practice, I replied, accepting the drink. Co-parenting teaches you to develop a thick skin. Still, he said, eyes crinkling at the corners, not many could watch their ex parade around with his replacement so publicly. I shrugged, aiming for nonchalance. Water under the bridge. Tanaka-san studied me with unexpected perception. Daiki admires you, you know. Says you're the backbone of the family. The one who holds everything together while others take the credit. The observation caught me off guard. I'd spent so long being invisible that recognition felt almost uncomfortable. Before I could respond, the wedding planner was ushering guests toward the reception hall. And Tanaka-san was whisked away by his wife. Inside, the tables gleamed with crystal and silver under cascading orchid centerpieces. I found myself seated at the family table, positioned between Takeshi and Yui, with Hiroshi and Natsuki directly across from me. The bridal couple sat at a sweetheart table in the center of the room, spotlit like royalty. Dinner passed in a haze of exquisite food I barely tasted, and conversation that flowed around rather than through me. Yi spent most of the meal on her phone, documenting every moment for her followers. Takeshi and his girlfriend Yuki spoke quietly with Tanaka-san about some tech innovation. Hiroshi told stories that made Natsuki laugh too loudly, her hand possessively on his arm. The sapphire earrings were a perfect touch, Sachiko commented as dessert was served. They complement Akira's coloring beautifully. They're stunning, I agreed, forcing warmth into my voice. Very generous of your mother to loan such heirlooms. Sachiko's smile tightened. Mother Tanaka doesn't loan them lightly. They've never left the family before. The implication was clear. My stepdaughter was now their family. I bit back a response as the DJ announced it was time for speeches. Hiroshi rose first, champagne in hand, and delivered a charming tribute to Akira that had guests dabbing at their eyes. He even acknowledged me gracefully, noting that Akira's strength and intelligence came from her stepmother's influence. It was a generous gesture from a man who had spent years diminishing my contributions. Then it was my turn. I'd practiced my speech for weeks, determined to strike the right balance between sentiment and brevity. As I spoke about Akira's determination from childhood, her passionate pursuit of her goals, my pride in the woman she'd become, I saw something shift in her expression. For a moment, the brittle socialite facade fell away and I glimpsed my actual daughter. The girl who once asked me to read her bedtime stories. Who cried on my shoulder over her first heartbreak. To Akira and Daiki, I concluded, raising my glass. May your partnership bring you joy, growth, and the comfort of true companionship. I love you both, the room applauded, and Akira mouthed, thank you, from across the room. It was a perfect moment, one I would cling to in the dark days ahead. After dinner came dancing. Hiroshi and Akira moved elegantly across the floor to a traditional waltz, another knife-twist reminder that he had been the fun parent, the one who taught her to dance while I managed homework and doctor appointments. I watched from the sidelines, smiling through the ache. May I? Takeshi appeared at my elbow, hand extended. My son, always the one who saw me. Aren't you supposed to dance with the maid of honor? I asked as he led me to the floor. Already did my duty, he said with a grin. Now I want to dance with the most beautiful woman here. We moved in comfortable silence for a moment before he spoke again, his voice lower. I know Akira hasn't been easy through all this, but she does appreciate you in her way. Her way is becoming increasingly hard to translate. I admitted, she's trying to fit into Daiki's world. Takeshi said gently. It doesn't excuse how she treats you, but I think she's scared of not measuring up. When the song ended, I excused myself, needing a moment of quiet. The hallway outside the reception was blissfully empty, the music muted behind heavy doors. I took a deep breath, centering myself. Sato-san, a hotel staff member approached, looking concerned. Tanaka-san is asking for you urgently in the bridal suite. I followed him up the grand staircase to the suite where we'd prepared earlier. The door was ajar and I could hear raised voices inside. I pushed it open to find Akira, Sachiko, and the wedding planner in what appeared to be an intense discussion. Marie-san, finally, Akira said, her face flushed with either anger or champagne. Maybe you can explain this. Explain what? I looked between the women, confused. Sachiko's voice was ice. The sapphire earrings. They're missing. Missing? I echoed. But you were wearing them during the ceremony. I took them off before the reception. Akira cut in. The posts were hurting my ears. I put them right here. She pointed to the vanity, her finger jabbing accusingly at the empty surface. And now they're gone. Perhaps they were moved during cleanup, I suggested. The wedding planner shook her head. We haven't touched anything in here since before the ceremony. Well, who's been in this room? I asked, trying to be practical. That's what we're trying to determine, Sachiko said, her gaze narrowing. The hotel is checking their keycard logs. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. Surely you don't think... You were up here right before the ceremony, Akira interrupted. You came to fix my veil. I stared at my stepdaughter in disbelief. Akira, what are you suggesting? But I knew. God help me. I already knew what was coming. You've always been jealous, she said, her voice rising. Jealous of Papa's success. Jealous of my relationship with Daiki's family. That's not true, I protested. But she was building momentum. And now these irreplaceable family heirlooms are missing. And you're the only one who was alone in this room. The accusation hung in the air, monstrous and absurd. I looked from Akira's angry face to Sachiko's cold suspicion to the wedding planner's uncomfortable avoidance. You think I stole the earrings? I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Your own stepmother? I don't know what to think, Akira said, but her tone made it clear she'd already decided. They were here and now they're gone. And you're always talking about your retirement fund and how much this wedding cost you. Because you asked me to pay for it. The words burst out before I could stop them. See? There it is. The martyr act. Akira's face contorted with fury. Everything's about money with you. Sato-san, Sachiko interjected smoothly. Perhaps you could empty your evening bag just to put everyone's mind at ease. I stared at Sachiko Tanaka in disbelief. You want me to empty my bag like a common thief? It would clear things up quickly, she replied, her voice reasonable, while her eyes remained cold. If you have nothing to hide, the implication hung in the air between us. I looked at my stepdaughter, waiting for her to defend me, to laugh off this absurd suggestion. But Akira's face was set in stubborn lines I knew all too well. The same expression she'd worn as a teenager when convinced she was right. Despite all evidence to the contrary. Fine. I snapped open my evening clutch, a simple silver piece I'd owned for years. See for yourself. I upended the contents onto the nearest surface. Lipstick, compact, phone, room key, a few tissues, and a 2,000 yen note. Satisfied? Sachiko examined the items with surgical precision. Your other bag, perhaps? The one you had earlier? I only brought this one to the reception, I said, feeling a flush creep up my neck. But you had a larger bag this morning, Akira insisted. Which is locked in my hotel room, I replied through gritted teeth. Along with the rest of my belongings. Then you won't mind if we check your room, Akira said, as if this were a perfectly normal request from a stepdaughter to her stepmother. Something inside me snapped. Actually, I do mind. This is outrageous, Akira. I'm your stepmother, not some stranger off the street you can accuse of theft. Marie-san, no one's accusing. Aren't you? I cut her off. Isn't that exactly what's happening here? You've lost some earrings and immediately your mind goes to, my stepmother must have stolen them. The wedding planner shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps I should give you some privacy. No, stay, Akira commanded. We might need a witness. A witness? As if we were in a police procedural rather than what should have been the happiest day of her life. The word choice revealed everything about how she saw me in that moment. Not as her stepmother, but as a suspect. This is absurd, I said, gathering my dignity around me like armor. I'm going back to the reception. When you're ready to apologize for this insulting behavior, you know where to find me. I turned to leave, but Akira stepped between me and the door. You're not going anywhere until we resolve this. Those earrings are worth over 10 million yen, Marie-san. The dollar amount hung in the air, a measure of how little she thought of me, of how easily she believed I could be tempted by material value over maternal love. Move aside, Akira, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Not until. The door opened then, and Yui walked in, still glued to her phone. There you all are? Daikie's looking everywhere for. She stopped, finally sensing the tension. What's going on? Your stepmother refuses to let us check her room for grandmother Tanaka's earrings. Akira explained as if this were a perfectly reasonable request. Yui's eyes widened. The sapphires, they're missing. She looked at me with dawning horror. Marie-san, you didn't. That was the moment I truly understood. It wasn't just Akira. Both my daughters believed me capable of this. Both of them, whom I had raised, cared for, and supported through every struggle and triumph of their lives, thought their stepmother was a thief. I see, I said quietly. The pain was so acute it circled back around to a strange, numbing clarity. Move aside, Akira. I'm leaving. If you walk out now, it only makes you look guilty. She shot back. I laughed then. A sound so hollow it barely resembled human emotion. Guilty in whose eyes? Yours. You've already convicted me without evidence, without even the courtesy of doubt. Sato-san, Sachiko began, but I cut her off with a raised hand. No, I've heard enough. I straightened my spine, looked my stepdaughter directly in the eyes. I did not take the earrings. I would never take anything from you, Akira. But you've taken something from me today that can't be replaced. I moved toward the door again, and this time Akira didn't block me. But her words followed me like daggers. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. You're not family anymore. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob, turned back one last time. Family doesn't do this to each other, Akira. Remember that when you find those earrings? I walked out, head high, back straight, moving on autopilot through the carpeted hallway, down the grand staircase. The reception was still in full swing. The dance floor crowded with laughing guests, unaware of the drama unfolding upstairs. The band played something upbeat and mindless. Champagne flowed. Life continued. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, unseeing and unseen. Or so I thought, until a hand caught my elbow. Mari, Hiroshi's voice. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I met my ex-husband's concerned gaze. For a moment I considered telling him everything, letting him handle the daughters he'd always been more skilled at managing. But no, this was between them and me now. Nothing's wrong, I said, easing my arm from his grip. I have a headache. I'm going to my room. But they haven't cut the cake yet, he protested. Akira will be disappointed if you miss it. I think Akira will survive my absence just fine, I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Good night, Hiroshi. I slipped away before he could question me further through the hotel lobby into the elevator. Inside my room, I kicked off my painful heels and sat on the edge of the bed, too numb even for tears. The woman in the mirror opposite looked like a stranger, elegantly dressed, makeup perfect, eyes empty. A soft knock at the door roused me from my trance. Hope fluttered briefly. Perhaps Akira had come to her senses, come to apologize. But it was Takeshi who stood in the hallway, concern etched across his features. Marie-san, what happened? Papa said you looked upset. I hesitated for only a moment before stepping aside to let him in. If anyone deserved the truth, it was my son who had always seen me clearly. Akira accused me of stealing the sapphire earrings, I said without preamble. Takeshi's face went slack with shock. What? That's insane. Apparently not to your sisters. Yui all but agreed with her. He sank onto the chair by the window, running a hand through his hair. They can't seriously think. They do. I sat opposite him on the bed. Sachiko Tanaka suggested I empty my purse. Akira wanted to search my room. Jesus Christ, Takeshi muttered. What is wrong with them? Where are the earrings now? Still missing, apparently, I said. But I'm now persona non grata at the wedding. Akira's exact words were, "You're not family anymore." Takeshi flinched as if I'd struck him. She didn't mean that. She's drunk and stressed, and she meant it. I was surprised by how calm I felt now. And you know what? For the first time in 20 years, I'm not going to smooth things over. I'm not going to make excuses for her behavior. I'm done. Marie-san, no. Takeshi, listen to me. I reached for his hand. I've spent my entire adult life being what everyone else needed me to be. The supportive ex-wife, the understanding stepmother, the background character in my own life story. Today, my stepdaughter accused me of being a thief and a liar in front of people who already look down on me. There's no coming back from that. There has to be, he argued. But I could see the doubt in his eyes. She'll find the earrings and apologize. And if she does, I'll accept her apology, but things will never be the same. I squeezed his hand. You should go back to the reception. Yuki will be wondering where you are. I'm not leaving you alone like this. I'm fine, Takeshi. Really? I summoned a smile. I'm going to take a hot bath, order room service, and go to bed early. Tomorrow is a new day. He hesitated, clearly torn between loyalty to me and obligation to his sister. Promise you'll call if you need me. I promise. I walked him to the door. I love you, you know. I'm proud of the man you've become. After he left, I did exactly as I'd said. Ran a bath, ordered tempura and green tea, changed into pajamas. I wasn't going to run away in the night like some disgraced character in a period drama. I would face whatever came next with dignity. As I slipped between the cool sheets, my phone buzzed with a text from Takeshi. I love you. This will all be sorted out tomorrow. I turned off my phone without replying and set it face down on the nightstand. Tomorrow would take care of itself. Tonight, I needed to mourn the death of something I hadn't known was so fragile. My stepdaughter's trust. My place in the family I had chosen. The illusion that love could transcend all wounds. Sleep didn't come easily, but when it did, it was dreamless and deep, the kind of sleep that follows profound emotional exhaustion. When I woke the next morning, something had changed inside me. Where there had been pain, there was now a cool, detached clarity. Where there had been hurt, there was now resolve. I had been broken, but I would remake myself into something stronger. And I would never allow my children to wound me that way again. I was in the shower when my phone began ringing incessantly. I ignored it. Whatever crisis had erupted at the post-wedding brunch, to which I had not been invited, was no longer my concern. I took my time, letting the hot water wash away the remnants of yesterday's makeup, yesterday's tears, yesterday's identity. When I finally checked my phone, I had 17 missed calls and twice as many texts from Takeshi, from Hiroshi, from Yui. Notably, none from Akira. I read Takeshi's most recent message. Marie-san, call me ASAP. The earrings were found. You need to hear this. I set the phone down without replying and dressed methodically in black slacks and a crisp white blouse. My armor for the confrontation I knew was coming. I ordered coffee from room service and sat by the window, watching the morning light play across the Tokyo skyline while I waited. The knock when it came was hesitant. I opened the door to find Takeshi and Yui standing in the hallway. Yui's eyes were red-rimmed, her face blotchy with tears. Takeshi looked grim. May we come in? He asked formally, as if I were a stranger. I stepped aside without a word. They entered, Yui hovering uncertainly while Takeshi took a seat in the armchair. The earrings were in Sachiko's purse, he said without preamble. One of the hotel staff found them this morning when they were clearing the bridal suite. I see. My voice was neutral, betraying none of the vindication surging through me. Marie-san, I'm so sorry, Yui blurted, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I should never have thought, should never have said. I raised a hand, silencing her. What exactly happened? Takeshi answered when it became clear Yui couldn't continue. Apparently Sachiko asked to see the earrings before the ceremony. She put them in her evening bag for safekeeping and then forgot about it when she switched purses for the reception. And the accusation against me? Akira is mortified, Yui said quickly. We all are. It was a terrible misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated, tasting the inadequacy of the word. Is that what we're calling it? Marie-san, please. Yui took a step toward me, hands outstretched. Akira was stressed and had too much champagne. She wasn't thinking clearly. She was thinking exactly what she's always thought of me. I corrected her. That I'm small, that I'm envious, that I'm less than. The champagne didn't create those thoughts, Yui. It only removed her filter. That's not fair, Yui protested weakly. Isn't it? I finally met her gaze directly. You believed it too, without hesitation. You looked at me and saw a thief. Your own stepmother? Yui flinched as if I'd slapped her. I was confused. Everything happened so fast. Stop. I didn't raise my voice, but the word cut through her excuses like a blade. I don't want explanations. I want you both to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. I waited until I had their full attention before continuing. Yesterday I was humiliated by my own stepdaughters. Accused of theft, asked to empty my purse like a shoplifter, told I was no longer family. My voice remained steady, controlled. Those words and actions can't be unsaid or undone. They revealed the truth about how I'm seen in this family, and I won't pretend otherwise to spare your feelings. Marie-san, Takeshi began, but I shook my head. I raised you to take responsibility for your choices, all of you. Akira chose to accuse me publicly rather than giving me the benefit of the doubt. You, Yui, chose to believe her without question. Those choices have consequences. What consequences? Yui asked, her voice small. I'm checking out of the hotel today. I won't be attending the brunch. When Akira returns from her honeymoon, she can contact me if she wishes. But I won't be reaching out to her. You can't just cut us off, Yui protested. I'm not cutting anyone off, I corrected her. I'm establishing boundaries. Something I should have done years ago. Akira wants to apologize in person, Takeshi said quietly. She's waiting downstairs. Of course she is. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Now that there's video evidence proving my innocence, she's ready to make amends. Video evidence? Yui repeated confused. Takeshi nodded grimly. The hotel has security cameras in the corridors. They reviewed the footage this morning when the earrings were found. It shows Sachiko entering the bridal suite alone before the reception. A cold realization washed over me. And if that footage hadn't existed, if it had just been my word against the circumstantial evidence? Neither of my children answered, but their silence was answer enough. Tell Akira I'm not ready to see her, I said finally. Perhaps in a few weeks after I've had time to process everything. Marie-san, please, Yui begged. She's devastated. We all are. I'm sure you are. I agreed, not unkindly. But your feelings don't erase mine. I need time. They left reluctantly. Yui still tearful. Takeshi conflicted. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The vindication I'd expected to feel was hollow, overshadowed by grief for what had been irrevocably lost. I packed methodically, leaving nothing behind. As I zipped my suitcase, my phone rang again. Akira's name flashed on the screen. I watched it ring until voicemail picked up, then listened to the message she left. Marie-san, it's me. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. Please come down so we can talk. I need to explain, to apologize in person. Marie-san, please. I love you. Her voice cracked on the last words, and for a moment I felt my resolve waver. Then I remembered her face as she'd said those fatal words. You're not family anymore. I deleted the message without replying. In the lobby, I kept my eyes forward, ignoring the clusters of wedding guests enjoying their coffee. The girl at the front desk processed my checkout efficiently, showing no sign of recognition or awareness of yesterday's drama. Did you enjoy your stay, Sato-san? She asked the standard customer service question. It was illuminating. I replied with a thin smile. Outside, my taxi was waiting. As I loaded my suitcase into the trunk, I caught sight of Akira hurrying across the lobby toward the entrance, her face tear-stained and desperate. Our eyes met through the glass doors. She raised a hand in pleading. I turned away, got into the car, and gave the driver my address. As we pulled away from the Imperial Hotel, I didn't look back. The life I had known was over. The one I would build in its place would be entirely of my own making. And this time, there would be no room for those who could wound me so carelessly, so completely, whether they shared my blood or not. In my purse, my phone continued to buzz with messages I wouldn't read, calls I wouldn't answer. Not today. Today was for silence, for clarity, for the painful birth of something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Tomorrow would be soon enough to begin plotting my response. 6 months after the wedding, on a crisp spring morning, I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, examining the woman I had become. My hair, which had been carefully coloured for decades, now showed its natural silver, a striking frame for features that had sharpened with resolve. I had lost weight not from grief but from purpose. 3-mile runs each morning, strength training 3 times a week. My body was becoming an instrument of my will rather than a vessel of service to others. The doorbell rang precisely at 9. Takeshi, punctual as always. I opened the door to find my son looking tired but resolute. "They're all here," he said without preamble. "Just like you asked." I nodded, retrieving my coat and purse. "Thank you for arranging this." "Marie-san." He hesitated. "Are you sure about this once it's done?" I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The drive to Hiroshi's house in Daikanyama was silent. Takeshi had been the only one I'd maintained contact with over the months, and even that relationship had been redefined by clear boundaries. He'd respected my silence, my refusal to discuss his sisters beyond the necessary logistics of today's meeting. "Did you tell them why I wanted to see them?" I asked as we parked. "Just that you had important news that affected everyone," he replied. "Nothing more." Hiroshi's home, the showcase he'd built with Natsuki after leaving me, loomed before us. All glass and steel and conspicuous prosperity. How fitting that the final act would play out here in the temple to materialism that had always symbolized what I'd failed to be, to provide, to become. They were gathered in the living room, Hiroshi and Natsuki on one sofa, Yui perched anxiously on an ottoman, Akira and Daiki standing by the window. Their conversation ceased abruptly when I entered. 6 months of ignored calls, returned letters, and rebuffed attempts at reconciliation had led to this moment. "Marie," Hiroshi rose, uncertain whether to embrace me. I solved his dilemma by extending my hand for a businesslike shake. "You look different." "Thank you," I replied, though it hadn't been a compliment. I took the single chair facing them all, declining Takeshi's offer to bring me tea. "I appreciate you all coming." "As if we had a choice," Akira said, attempting a lightness her brittle smile couldn't support. My stepdaughter, still beautiful, still poised, but thinner now, with shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. Marriage hadn't softened her as I'd once hoped it might. "You've always had choices, Akira," I replied calmly. "We all have, and we all live with the consequences of those choices." The room fell silent. I opened my handbag and removed 5 identical envelopes, each bearing a name in my precise handwriting. I placed them on the coffee table. 6 months ago, at Akira's wedding, I was publicly accused of theft. I began without emotion. I was humiliated, dismissed, and told I was no longer family. Since then, I've had ample time to reflect on what family truly means and what it doesn't. "Marie-san, please," Yui interjected. "We've apologized 100 times. How long are you going to punish us?" "This isn't punishment, Yui. It's consequence." I gestured toward the envelopes. "Please take the one with your name." They exchanged wary glances before reaching for their respective envelopes. Only Takeshi knew what they contained, and even he looked apprehensive. "Inside, you'll find legal documents prepared by my attorney," I explained as they opened the envelopes. "I've sold my beauty salon. After 27 years, I received an offer I couldn't refuse from a luxury chain looking to expand their Tokyo presence." "You sold the business?" Hiroshi looked up sharply. "Without consulting any of us?" "Yes," I said simply. "Just as you sold your company shares 15 years ago, without consulting me. The difference is I'm informing you of the outcome." "But why?" Yui asked, scanning the documents with confusion. "You loved that place." "I did," I agreed. "But it served its purpose. It put food on our table when your father left. It paid for your educations. It funded Akira's wedding. And now it's funding my future." "What future?" Akira asked, her voice small. "My future in Kyoto," I replied. "I've purchased a small traditional house near Gion. I leave next month." The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. "Kyoto," Hiroshi spluttered. "You can't just move to Kyoto." "Actually, I can. My arrangements are complete, my new life planned, and my resolve is absolute." "But what about us?" Yui gestured vaguely to include her siblings. "That's the second part of what's in your envelopes." I continued calmly. You'll note I've updated my will and trust documents. The proceeds from the sale of my business and eventually my Tokyo apartment will be placed in a trust with Takeshi as the sole trustee. Akira's head snapped up. Takeshi? Why only Takeshi? Because Takeshi was the only one who didn't accuse me of being a thief, I replied without inflection. The only one who didn't question my character or my love. This is about the earrings. Daiki spoke for the first time incredulous. You're disinheriting your stepdaughters over a misunderstanding? No, Daiki. I'm responding to a revelation. I met his gaze steadily. The earrings incident didn't create the problem. It merely exposed it. My stepdaughters showed me exactly who they believe I am. I'm simply taking them at their word. Marie-san. Akira's voice broke as she clutched the papers. Please don't do this. We made a terrible mistake, but we love you. I know you believe that's true, I said not unkindly. But love without respect isn't love at all. It's habit. It's obligation. It's many things, but it isn't love. So that's it. Yui was crying now. You're just gone forever. Not forever. I corrected her. But on new terms, my terms, I stood, signaling the end of the meeting. You're all adults now. You've built lives without me at the center of them. Now I'm building a life without you at the center of it. The protests came then as I'd known they would. Tears from Yui, anger from Akira, practical objections from Hiroshi. I weathered them in silence, unmoved. Only when the storm had passed did I speak again. You accused me of theft once, I said quietly. In a way, you were right. I am taking something back, my life. My dignity, my power to define who and what I am. I walked to the door, Takeshi following silently behind me. I paused on the threshold, turning back one last time to the family I had chosen and lost and now released. Goodbye, I said simply. Be well. Outside, the spring sunshine felt like a benediction. Takeshi touched my arm gently as we reached the car. Are you okay? He asked. I'm free, I replied. And for the first time in decades, it was nothing but the truth. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the house, at the life I was leaving behind. The road ahead stretched clear and bright, leading toward a horizon I had chosen for myself. There would be no forgiveness, not in the way they wanted it. A neat absolution that erased consequences and restored the comfortable dynamic they had taken for granted. Instead, there would be this, a clean break. A fresh start, a life reclaimed from the ashes of betrayal. And if there was a certain satisfaction in knowing they would feel the loss of me now, truly feel it, perhaps for the first time, well, that wasn't vengeance. That was justice.